Right, welcome to the inaugural professorial,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Yeah, that's the one.
The professorial inaugural lecture, that's the way you're supposed to say it. We are in for a treat tonight. I want to give you all a really, really warm welcome. I know people have travelled from near and far. I also know there will be people coming in for the first couple of minutes. So if everybody stays left, they can sort of sneak in at the ends. That would be really, really helpful. My name is Claire Marie Boggiano. And as you see, we've gone strong on the Irish contingent this evening. Isn't that right, Caroline?
Yeah.
And I am absolutely thrilled. I feel very honoured to have the pleasure of doing the opening address for you tonight. Caroline and I came across each other. Now, Manchester, for those of you who know it, has a huge Irish community, yeah? But you don't always come across each other from the very beginning. So the first time I saw Caroline in action, and it was in action, she was actually interviewing Father Dougal Maguire. I think many of you will know him, so Ardal O'Hanlon, at Manchester Literature Festival. And you gave him a good grilling, didn't you? You put him over his paces. It was very entertaining. And I thought, who's she? She's good. Want to get to know her. And then we also meet up quite a lot through the Women of Irish Heritage Network, which again, if any of you are interested in that, come and talk to myself or Caroline as the evening goes on. And also, Caroline did us the honour earlier on this year at speaking at the Women Leading in Business Network that I host. And I was absolutely delighted to get her because I really wanted her to talk about her latest book, Harpy, a manifesto for child-free women. I just thought, well, that sounded like a great idea, but I might have missed that one myself. So I'm not really going to say much else because I know you've prepared quite a lot. I am going to say I am really, really intrigued about what we're going to hear tonight at this inaugural lecture, because I've been in Manchester over 30 years, and this whole thing about feeling Irish or feeling Mancunian or feeling whatever is a really interesting arena just to explore and navigate. So Caroline, the floor is yours, and I enjoy it. I wish you luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You got my slides? Oh, do I click this? Yeah. My face has disappeared. So, yep, everybody, I just like to thank Claire Marie to begin with. I was asking some friends about who should chair the event, and they were like, has to be an Irish woman. And I thought of the first and sort of best Irish woman. And so thank you very much, Claire Marie, for that. So, to begin with, Kate Beautifulja, Guji, Old School Salford. Welcome to the University of Salford, and like thank you so much for making the effort to come tonight. Like I don't take you giving up your evenings for me lightly. I also know there might be a lot of people in the room who may not know what an inaugural lecture is. I certainly didn't until the last few years. And yeah, so sort of here I am. So I'm hoping that you find our university a welcoming place. I hope that you, if this is your first time on our campus, that you come back. We have lots of public events, we have a lovely theatre. I really do hope that you see that everyone, however you are, you're really welcome here with us tonight. The other thing is there will be a little question and answer at the end. If you've never asked a question before, do feel free and welcome to do that later on. I'm going to do all of the thanking first, and then I'll do all the Irish lit immediately after that. So first of all, Sanji and her team have been amazing. The events team have really been fantastic. Such care, such organisation that I have not seen. Really, really wonderful work. I'd like to thank Ivan Garcia, Alan Walker and Martin Bull for their invaluable support in my application to Professor. I'd also like to thank all of the They've been called various things over the years, subject group leaders, directors, I don't know what to call them anymore, but Frances, Glenn, Maggie, Tim and Tracy, thank you very much. I'm really lucky to work here among colleagues in English, past and present, that are here tonight. Simply the best people to work with, really are. I am sort of challenged and inspired all the time, so I'm really lucky to be where I am. We're also home to the Northern School of Writing, which you can find more details about online, led by David Saville, to bring together the activity in writing, not just in English, but across our school. So that's really exciting. That's a really exciting time to be at Salford. I'm especially proud to be one of 5 professors of English at Salford. 4 of us are women. Myself, Jackie Kay, Ursula Hurley, and Jade Munso on. Sometimes we let Scott Thurston into our clubhouse. Just all depends on how we're feeling that day. And to our students, past and present, again, it just means the world to see so many of you here tonight. And the fact that you keep caring about literature and culture, no matter what the world throws at you, is sort of endlessly inspiring. The other thing that I have to say today is that we're also launching something today, which is the I put the PowerPoint online because people always melt my head about what drugs that I talk about, and they're always like, oh, what was that and what was that? So I just thought, put it online, you can look it up yourselves. So I'll send this around as well, so you sort of know what I'm talking about. So tonight we are also launching a new network, the University of Salford Irish Studies Network, to bring together the researchers across the university who are interested in contemporary Irish culture. We have people who are interested in literature, theatre, documentary making, art, history, lots of different researchers. So if that's something that you're interested in, do please get in touch with us to help us sort of set the agenda for that new research grouping. If you please get in touch with me, or Sheila is here. Where is Sheila? Sheila's there. Sheila McCormick is there as well. Some other thanks. I'm sorry. I promise this isn't going to get like too Gwyneth Paltrow. I just none of us get here by ourselves. You know. My PhD supervisor, Eamon Hughes, is the reason I'm here today. I was also really lucky when I was a PhD student that lots of people who weren't paid to just mentored me informally. So I'd like to thank Claire Connolly, Jodie Meany, Tina O'Toole, Amal Hall and Moyna Sullivan. Also to the people in publishing that have been so wonderful and generous with my work over the years, particularly the teams at Icon and Bloomsbury, and David Torrens at No Alibis bookstore in Belfast, who's been continually supportive of me and my books ever since I was a PhD student. And thank you to Shelley Edwards, my agent, who's really guided me into different kinds of writing with her rare grace. So I'm really lucky to have her here. If she hadn't have both got married and bought a house in the last 2 weeks, she was going to be here, and I really I really regret that she's not here. So also, because I don't just spend all of my time with academics, thank you to my friends for all of their wise advice this last few weeks, especially when all of the dresses that I ordered for tonight arrived, and I decided to go with the plain black one in the end. To Catherine and Nicholas Bell, my family who are here tonight over from Portadown, to whom obviously I owe everything. Students, that's my mum, so that's the one you have to tell I'm an amazing teacher to. And to Edward Ryan, who hates when he signs in public, but without whom I'd be entirely lost. I've been really, like I said, I've been really lucky to find different kinds of friendship and solidarity. Come on, Hayden. Throughout my career. Many of my colleagues in the greater field of Irish studies are often in really difficult situations in their own countries and institutions. Many of them work under regimes which want to repress their scholarship and their freedom of speech, and the wider global context of sort of the devaluing of the humanities and the work that they do. So I feel really fortunate to be here tonight and to feel like I can speak really freely without censorship or restriction. And I also think it's worth saying, while technically no one can take the microphone away from me tonight, that I'm really proud to work with colleagues from all around the world who bring so much to our teaching and research here at Salford. and how dare anyone ever try to tell us otherwise. And if you thought you were getting politics, you should not have come to a talk given by an Irish woman. So good luck. And if you want to know more about any of the stuff that I'm doing tonight, so I'll talk about some of my ways of understanding some of these books. But if you want to know more, my book, Northern Irish Writing After the Troubles, is available as an open access book. So you can have a wee look at that. And I want to thank our library team, especially Wendy Taylor and Emma Smith, for answering all of my questions on open access and rights and things like that. Most of my scholarship you can read for free online, which is grand. So now we get to the Irish bit. So, well, tonight is a celebration of Irish identity, of the richness and the variety of the culture that we produce. I want to talk for a little while about what it means to be Irish in the northwest of England. And I know that so many of you may well come from that Irish heritage, and that might be a really important part of you and your identity. I find that since I've lived in the northwest of England, people are really willing to have a dialogue about their heritage and their culture, which means such a great deal. Our shared culture then is woven. There's all of these factors that come into play when we start to think about this, about our heritage. This part of the world was undeniably touched by the violence of the Troubles, which was something we explored in an event in 2016, which looked at the 20th anniversary of the Manchester bomb, which I co-organised with George Legge from King's College London. And speaking at that event was Louise Lowe, who with the new productions directed on Corporation Street, which some of you may well have seen, which took over home theatre for an immersive production on the legacy of the Manchester bomb. And both the production and the event led to important conversations with colleagues, friends, students. And George and I then went on to organise a sellout event on the 20th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement with Maggie Scull of Syracuse University, which was sponsored by the Reconciliation Fund of the Government of Ireland. And I'm really proud of what we achieved with that, because we had so many open, frank discussions about who gets to benefit from the peace process since the Good Friday Agreement. Now, while I get to explore the nuances, the complications of Irish identity and of Irish and Britain identity as well, I know that there are people from other generations who have not been so fortunate and have experienced anti-Irish racism. We all know about, the signs in the window. We all know about the language that has been used to talk about Irish people over the years. Emer Maguire, who's the director of Maguire Family Law and chairperson of the board of the Women of Irish Heritage Network, said in the Irish Times that I was asked if I was a terrorist every day, asked if I was in the IRA. I don't think Emer would have been very good in the IRA. While my own experience has not been the same as people who arrived during that period, we've all had the supposedly hilarious comments from people, "Oh, you Irish, you love a drink," as if we've never been on a Northern Rail carriage at the weekend. Now, Irish migrants have suffered. Now, this is the bit that's a bit grim. It'll get celebratory in the end, but you need to take your medicine first. So Irish migrants have suffered a range of hardships while trying to make lives for themselves. And the awareness of this, to me, means that we should always act on the plight of those who find themselves far from home. For example, academics have shown that there's a reversal of the usual healthy migrant effect among Irish-born people, especially those who travelled here in the 1950s and 1960s. They generally had worse health than both the English and the people and the people back home as well. Irish men, especially living in England, have faced extremely high rates of mental health problems and suicide. And many people, especially in the 20th century, left Ireland not only to find work, but for a more tolerant place to live. Whenever I was researching my book, Harpy, I found that there were a lot of women who felt that they couldn't even sort of live among their friends and family because they didn't want to have children, and they felt that they would be so ostracised. I interviewed a lot of women who that was the case for them. You hear a lot of similar stories of exclusion from members of the LGBTQ+ community as well. because you might feel Irish, but there's a sense that the state might not always love you back. I have a great PhD student at the moment, Elsie Unsworth, who's working on how traveller writers, how migrant writers, how they engage with folklore as the kind of the foundational myths of the Irish state. And it's clear that there's so much thoughtful work starting to emerge on who are the people who are thought to be Irish, who gets to be Irish, who gets to share in such a wonderful cultural bounty. So to meet these long-standing needs then, and to support newer people here, there are magnificent, I want to pay tribute to all the wonderful support work that goes on across the country. I'm very glad that we have representatives from the sort of the Consul General here tonight as well, to sort of share with us this wonderful work all over the north of England. From Irish in Britain, the national organisation for Irish community groups, to the many others funded through the Government of Ireland's Immigrant Support Fund. And I want to pay a special tribute to the work of Irish Community Care. Now, you really they have this amazing programme of events. So they have Shanahy Storyteller Nights, they have a History Club, they have events for specific events for men, they have events for younger women. Their programme is just really phenomenal. I saw them a few weeks ago and it's just really so energetic. They're always looking for volunteers as well, and especially arts facilitators. So that's something that we might think about getting involved with in the future. So Central to Irish Identity is a complex story of migration. And Aisling Logan, one of our current PhD students, gave a paper to us just last week about how the history of Irish migrancy means that we have to ask really important questions about how we then relate to other migrant communities. Now, in The Guardian, historian Maurice Casey noted that a nuanced understanding, oh, my slides have been there for ages. What have you been doing? Okay, these are the nice slides here. There we are, we're more busy now. So it's like, all this lovely work, this is all the stuff that's going on. Anyway, sorry, again, the slides will be online, we'll be all right. So he says that a nuanced understanding of our history can help us fight anti-immigrant sentiment. Telling our island's history as a migrant story reveals how the definition of Irish identity is always in process, never completed. Yet this history also reveals how solidarity is an active choice we make, not an inevitable outgrowth of past hardship and oppression. And he's got great work like outlining sort of historical sort of like anti-racist and anti-capitalist. This book's really, really good. And in a similar vein, I am always galvanised by the writing of Irish poet and activist Sarah Clancy. But especially given recent events, her words have been, they've really been with me these last few weeks. And Sarah Clancy says, "We have no other time to exist in except this series of moments, and however slim the chinks in our armour are, it's still a chance to have at it and make what we will. We must live in these times and no other. I, for one, might need some help with that. Is that too much to ask for?" So this idea then of mutual aid, care and solidarity strikes me at the heart of what it must be to be Irish. To feel Irish is to think about kinship and solidarity in generative ways. For many of us who are Irish in Britain, and now we get to the glitzy culture bit, culture is the way that we stay connected to an important part of our identity, but not all of us relate to culture in the same way. What I respond to is the idea within Irish culture that debate and challenge is part of the landscape, that expressing conflict, expressing complexity is not something to be feared, but rather a way that all of us can really sharpen our own ideas. We can have our debates and be best pals the next day, unless you say that Saoirse Ronan is a great British actress. Now, you don't need me to tell you that Irish culture is really vibrant, mostly because that's been true in so many sectors on and off for decades. Although a public service announcement, most Irish people do not care about if you split the G or not. That is not important to any part of our identity. So, you know the actors. This is part of our, sort of the way that Irish culture is really kind of making a splash at the moment. But each of these actors, so we have Jessie Buckley, Nicola Coughlan, Colin Farrell, Sharon Horgan, Barry Keoghan, Darren McCormick. We also have, you can pick your favourite here, Paul Mescal, Kelly Murphy, Ruth Nega, Lola Pettigrew, Saoirse Ronan and Andrew Scott. but none of them are afraid to take on roles that are complicated, and none of them are afraid to make their politics known well as well. Irish design is also booming worldwide, from Kellador, who are remaking to the traditional Irish football jerseys, to Simone Rocha, to Aoife Colley's amazing Technicolor scarves, to the Welsh-based Corkbourne Black and Beach. The creative director of Christian Dior, who was formerly at Loewe, is from Mahrafelt. Can you imagine? Sorry, that means something if you know Northern Ireland. And also Belfast-based jewellery designer Lines and Current, whose lovely pieces I'm wearing tonight. That wasn't. I'm not sponsored by them. I just like them. You know what I mean? I'm not getting myself a career as an influencer. The Array Collective won the Turner Prize in 2021, and Irish sort of experimental video art is particularly booming. Irish comedy is really thriving. The coming months will see Mike Rice, Kayla Cobbler, Victoria Angeloni, Aisling B, Darbrain and Killian Sunderman and more play to packed audiences across the city. Of course, music, I can't be here without mentioning that, is a domain in which Irish artists have consistently excelled, from the massive, I'm sure you saw the massive sort of Fontaines and Nika gigging within Shaw Park, some of you were there, Hosier, Bicep, so just pick your own, Denise Chyla, Kaki Kid, Jazzy, there's so many good Irish music artists kind of coming through, reinventing the form, not being afraid again of that sense of conflict. I first saw Craigavon Bourne, now award-winning composer and musician Hannah Peel, at a church in Salford with a few people that are here today as part of the Sounds from the Other City Music Festival. And recently I hosted Annie Mack at the Manchester Literature Festival, who writes novels about the Irish in Britain alongside DJ nights that get you home by midnight. That's the important thing about an Annie Mack night, to get you home by midnight. Now, I'll take a little sip of my water before I go because I can't do this woman not justice. So. The combination then of politics, complexity and creativity comes to mind most vividly in CMAT's recent album, Euro Country. In the title song, she sings, "All the big boys, all the birdies, all the envelopes, yeah, they hurt me. I was 12 when the dads started killing themselves all around me. And it was normal building houses that stay empty even now, yeah. And no one says it out loud, but I know it can be better if we hound it." Now, this song clearly articulates the legacy of the financial crash in Ireland, the ghost estates, the impact of financial breakdown and political corruption, something many have been all too willing to sweep under the carpet. The album also addresses sexism, ageism, and a burning hatred for Jamie Oliver. Of course, today we're going to talk about literature. And again, people ask me for reading recommendations all the time, right? And I have things that I read and I like, and that's grand. There's so much of it. And every time you slightly sort of don't look for a second, there's like a load of new Irish novels. They take this as some things that I like. You might like other things, and I'm okay with that as well. So just a few things to sort of talk about that have made the same sort of waves and had that same sort of complexity. In literature, Sean Hewitt, who was raised in the Irish diaspora not too far from us near Warrington, and now at Trinity College, writes award-winning poetry, fiction and memoir. Doing all three feels almost rude. In non-fiction, Emily Pine and Caroline Doherty have offered bold and intricate portrayals of women's lives, and the ubiquitous Sally Rooney manages to both sell books by the shed load without compromising on either her politics or her art. Claire Keegan's award-winning writing is unafraid to confront the contradictions at the heart of the Irish state and its institutions. Emer McBride's novels push form itself, challenging the way in which we see the world and especially female subjectivity. Susanna Dickey, who's a really amazing writer, her experimental book Isdal offers a fierce, thrilling twist on the familiar true crime genre. And even writers that are sometimes labelled popular, like Marianne Keyes, as if that was a bad thing, take on subjects like addiction, reproductive rights. They just happen to have a pinker cover than the books where the men do it. Katie Barnes's forthcoming book on representations of Irish motherhood will be published next year from Liverpool University Press, and she graduated with a PhD with us this summer. Now, fiction is what I work on. I work on fiction. I love novels. That's just what I'm really interested in. But you'll know well the contribution of Irish writers to literally every literary art form, from screenwriting to playwriting to poetry and non-fiction. To give just one example, again, like I did with CMAT, Micheál McCann's stunning collection, Devotion, reworks the Kenny, Art O'Leary by Evelyn Dubney-Connell into a beautiful contemporary queer narrative, along poems that showcase impressively varied tonal shifts, from the everyday beauty of domestic life to the horrors lurking in Belfast's recent past. It's a stunning book, and there are 3 copies in our library as well. So how might we think about this? These texts that are often really exciting formally and really provocative politically as well. Now, I'm going to only define my terms a little bit, right? You have to let me do this, because whenever you're an academic, all we're doing is arguing about words and terms and things. So just give me a little bit of this, and then we'll be ready to be oversight. To take up the first term then used in my title tonight. The sociologist John E. Fox describes it in this way. He says, the spatial edges of the nation, the borders and border crossing practices that can make an otherwise implicit nationalism explicit. So I want to think about these edges in different ways. The first are the communities who live along the border. Now, of course, some people do not recognise the border, they do not recognise partition, that's their political kind of orientation. But this idea of somewhere that is an edge between nations has been really, I think, productively explored by writers like Colin Devine and Gary Carr, both of whom have non-fiction accounts of walking the border. James Conroy Patterson's a really interesting newer writer who has a book, Bandit Country, based on that sort of traditional idea of how people viewed that part of the world, and also has edited a collection of poetry as well on that area. In addition to this sort of disputed land border, this edge, Ireland is also, as we know, an island nation on the edge of Europe and the Atlantic, fabled last parish before America. And the sea has been given almost mythical status in Irish literature. I think you have everything from Bernie McGill's brilliant North Coast novel, The Watch House, playwright James Synge's Rider to the Sea, John Banville's The Sea. Could go on and on and on. The sea becomes this other sort of psychic border within Irish writing as well, that kind of asks us to question where part of our identity ends and begins. But those of us who live elsewhere might also think of ourselves as on the edge of a nation, a national identity that's very important to us, yet we are elsewhere. We know all too well the emotional currents of the short flight home. It's only 35 minutes, but it can feel like an eternity. For me, the sight of a giant smiling potato is my own edge. This is the potato that sponsors Belfast City Airport. If you're not familiar, and it is the marker for me of the sense of being sort of kind of many places at once and moving between identity. If I see the potato, I know that I'm home. So, to turn now to the other part of the title. So we're thinking about where are we when we're on the edge? Are we on the edge because we have been excluded from the nation? Are we geographically on the edge? How are we relating to this concept, this nebulous concept of Irishness? I want to talk this other idea of feeling. Now, feeling is something that's really controversial whenever we start to talk about it. Often it's used to undermine people. It's used to diminish their capacity for power. Women might still be accused of being too emotional for leadership. And given what's happening on the world stage, that's a bit rich. But anyway, and talking about feeling also makes people feel deeply uncomfortable. Even though literature and culture are those places that we can safely explore our most taboo emotional states. Feelings are messy and imprecise, and sometimes we just don't want to deal with the feelings of others. Leading with feeling raises a different anxiety, that a strong emotion might be used to justify anything, from narcissistic self-interest to large-scale violence. At one extreme, when we're led by white-hot emotions we can barely articulate, and at the other, we have the sense that maybe we feel nothing at all. Now, even people who write about feeling, even theorists who write about feeling, and this is a book I always recommend, which is, and it's really easily available as PDF online, is Anne Kvetkovich's Depression, a Public Feeling. And it's really about how her and a group of scholars, after sort of September the 11th and sort of the war in Iraq, they felt that they were simultaneously themselves having these, these emotional states, but these emotional states seem to be something that lots of different people were feeling. And I think if there's something that lots of different people are feeling within a society, it's worth listening to and worth paying attention to. And that's what happens within this book. And she talks about this idea, like we all use different terms to talk about, you know, sort of how we're feeling. Some of us have more sort of terms than others. And she says that terms such as affect, emotion, and feeling are more like keywords, points for departure for discussion rather than definition. Now, language has a lot of issues here. I'll talk about a novel in a second that uses the word mood a lot and really draws upon a prevailing public mood. We've all had that idea, you know, everything from consumer confidence to like the markets are depressed. You know, all of these sorts of, we have this language to talk about things collectively, but the language shifts and changes indeed as those sort of the way we feel shifts and changes in any given sort of time as well. So it's complicated, and we think about even how our mood can be shaped by those around us. You know, imagine walking into a room where you sense a collective charge, you know, an atmosphere, like bad feeling, you know, bad vibe. I'm sure the young people have another word for it now, but it means it's probably the same as some of the things that we called it as well. So it's complicated, and that's exactly the point. But literature is where we can have these complicated conversations, to examine both the feelings we hold as individuals, to know that we are often not alone in some of those really strong feelings, but also to look at the way in which emotional states move throughout communities. And I don't want to suggest that, which I have been accused of before, nearly always by men, that feeling is a replacement for knowledge. I want to argue that it is a companion to it, because if we don't pay attention to feeling, and if we don't pay attention to that, then we won't really be able to have the fullness of our understanding. And I think that contemporary Irish culture offers an especially rich place to think through and sit with the complexity that intersects with both the big political questions on one hand and also the creative impulse that is fundamental to how each of us lives our lives. My own critical focus then has been the remarkable flourishing of fiction from the North in particular in recent years, from the North of Ireland, especially since the peace process of the late 1990s, and what that reveals about some of the questions that I've been talking about today. Because if you take a society that goes from, you know, a 30-year, you know, and obviously the boundaries can be contested about when the Troubles ended, if they've ended, all the rest of it. But the idea that there was a massive conflict that affected every part of people's lives, It affected every part of their social lives, every part of their romantic lives. It very clearly affected that landscape of feeling. And what I'm interested in are what can literature tell us then about that? What can literature tell us about those moments of complexity, those moments where things aren't necessarily the way that we've had the narrative given to us? A lot of us who are sort of from the north initially, we have a sense of a timeline in our heads of what happened in the conflict, but then you also have your own personal individual milestones. And how does the individual feeling intersect with that collective is really what I'm interested in. Now, in recent years, some complicated texts that I think have addressed this particularly well are The Magic Realism of Jan Carson, the lyrical prose of Lucy Caldwell, the vivid edge of Wendy Erskine, who I think is a brilliant writer, who taught Lucy Caldwell English, and now they're kind of contemporaries on the writing scene, which is brilliant. The incisive realism of Michael McGee's Close to Home, the clear-eyed emotional power of Louise Kennedy's Trespasses, seem to be made into Channel 4 show starring Gillian Anderson, and the striking short stories of Leithen McQuinn that capture the complexity young people face in Ireland today. But I want to focus briefly on one novel that for me encapsulates, I think, what I've been talking about best, which is Anna Burns's Booker Prize winning novel, Milkman. Now, I know this novel really divides audiences. I know it's fine, it's grand, it'll be fine. But I think it's one of the most important texts to pay attention to the way that she describes mood. The way so the novel is basically set in a town you presume it's Belfast, because you've got enough markers that they're down by the waterworks where she goes for runs. You can hear sort of enough of what's going on historically. So if you kind of know the North, you're like, well, that's Northern Ireland about 73, 74. You kind of get that sense of it, but the novel's not going to give that to you, because why would it? That would be too easy. And in this novel then, it follows a young woman who's sort of referred to as middle sister throughout the book, and follows her feeling, her basically curtailing her own behaviour because she feels under threat, which I'm sure is an experience that I think is worth talking about and is really vivid. Now, in this novel, Middle Sister just tries to describe the prevailing mood. There was now a feeling in the room to which nobody was admitting, ominous, unpleasant, grey. She is on the edge of her community, of her nationalist community. Suspicion surrounds her for reading in public and for having an ambiguous relationship with even the very idea of the nation. Now, Burns presents throughout this novel an acute awareness of feeling and a sensitivity towards change in individual and collective mood. Women in the novel in particular seem acutely aware of these changes because of how much it affects their safety and how much it affects their sense of themselves. Now, this atmosphere that Burns builds throughout the novel can be summarised in this passage. At the time, aged 18, having been brought up in a hair-trigger society where the ground rules were, if no physically violent touch was being laid upon you and no outright verbal insults were being levelled at you and no taunting looks in the vicinity either, then nothing was happening. So how could you be under attack from something that wasn't there? Now, this is the difficult bind of feeling that Middle Sister finds herself in. She can sense that something is wrong, and I'm sure each of us have had that feeling where we know something is wrong. And this tells us a lot about what it felt like to live through the conflict, but also what it can feel to live in a country that's emboldened hatred on the streets. It's an exploration of what it feels like to bear hostility and regulate your own behaviour because of it. But the novel is also unafraid of complexity. It features moments of lightness. It features moments of pleasure alongside this this relentlessly and challenging sort of atmosphere. There are moments of dancing. There are moments of joy. There is art. Even within this downbeat mood, there are these moments. Middle Sister plans a run with her brother-in-law, and this moment I think is symbolic. I think of that idea of like being able to tolerate complexity that I've been talking about. And she says, I inhaled the early evening light and realised this was softening, what others might term a little softening. Then standing on the pavement in the direction of the parks and reservoirs, I exhaled this light, and for a moment, just a moment, I almost nearly laughed. Now, this run skirts around Middle Sister's own edge of the nation, the areas where sort of the Unionist and the Nationalist areas live side by side. So she is literally curtailed by her own national identity and the perception of that. While the conflict goes on for many years after the after the novel takes place, it is in these moments that I found endless inspiration. The places where small acts of kindness lead to something really generative. Now, I am moving towards a conclusion. How long do I have? About 5 minutes? Is that how long we're allowed? There's a very tight schedule for this thing because we have to go over to the museum and have a drink, so we'll be all right. All right, so literature and culture, this thing that we do all day, is often portrayed as some sort of a fluffy add-on and nice to have. Instead, it is where the most challenging and generative conversations about our lives happen. Just because something is enjoyable does not mean it's not important. So here we are in Salford, many of us living on the edge of national identities, and I love working somewhere where not just with an Irish identity, but so many of my colleagues, so many of my students share with me the complexity of their own identities. We are carrying uneasy relationships to different parts of our heritage, things that at times don't quite sit right. But here, that complexity, and you're willing to recognise the complexity in others, is welcomed. If nationality is something felt, that we can feel its edges too. The places where belonging can exclude others. For all of us who believe nations should be welcoming and expansive, it remains vital to keep having these kinds of conversations. I want to leave you with the second part of a great poet from sort of the edge of County Armagh, Sinead Morrissey. Her poem in Belfast is about the speaker. You also have to say the speaker, because when you say the poem, you presume everything's autobiographical, and we don't do that. We're more nuanced than that here at Salford. So the speaker of the poem, who just happens to have a similar biography, says that. And please indulge me in reading this out, because I think it's a really important few stanzas. So she says, I have returned after 10 years to a corner, and tell myself it is as real to sleep here as the 20 other corners I have slept in. More real even with this history's dent and fracture splitting the atmosphere. And what I have been given is a delicate unravelling of wishes that leaves the future unspoken and the past unencountered and unaccounted for. This city weaves itself so intimately, it is hard to see. Despite the tenacity of the river and the iron sky, in its downpour and its vapour, I am as much as home here as I will ever be. Now, we obviously in this city know downpour and vapour a bit all too well. But I think for those of us who have moved between places that have woven themselves into us, but also people who've had to make home where it was found, and I'm really glad for the home that I've made here in Salford. But this sense of being as much at home here as we will ever be, I think rings really true for a lot of us, especially those of us from the Irish diaspora. This poem then about return resonates in a deep, bittersweet way for those who are unsure whether any kind of return will ever be possible, or have instead made a different kind of home here that is very much our own, just as it is the home of our colleagues. On the edge of the nation, but lucky enough, being Irish, we get to experience our Irishness pretty regularly, and it shapes how we see ourselves wherever we are in all its complexity. We are very lucky as Irish people to be a migrant group. We have a rich literature that shows people our humanity, and many other groups are not as lucky. So thank you all for visiting our university tonight, or watching online. Like I said, you've given up your time, and I really do not take that lightly at all. So I just want to leave you by saying, thank you very much.
Whoa. Whoa. How many of those books have you read? Got a big list now, haven't you? There's no excuse. You're even going to share it before you were asked?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I have an opportunity of about 10 minutes or so to take some questions or comments or whatever you'd like to ask, Caroline. We're going to go to the Zoom room first, or the online room. And I have one here, and I'm just going to read out to you. So, how do Salford students respond to the Irish literature you teach? Do they have any particular favourites?
Yes, yeah. There's a few of them in the audience. You can ask them as well. Yeah, I think I try to sneak in as much Irish literature as I possibly can within our curriculum. Some very tolerant colleagues that let me do that. But we're very lucky that we have, such a rich literary heritage. We're nearly any period that you're teaching. We have other colleagues here who teach, Bram Stoker on it, and we teach W. Yeats, we teach James Joyce, we teach all sorts of things, as well as much more contemporary text. We have other colleagues here and from sort of performance and from art who teach Irish text as well. So I think we just have, there's just so much of it of such a good quality that you can fit it in on nearly every module, which is really helpful. But what I find is that students often respond to things that you wouldn't think, and it's so surprising and so individual every year. So many students who respond like amazingly well to the complexity around faith in James Joyce, even if they haven't been raised Catholic, but they've raised another faith, it's really profound for them. Students who in particular, the ambiguity in a poem like Maeve McGookian really speaks to them as well. So every year you put this literature in front of people, and I'm blown away by how open-minded people are. And I'm also interested in how often students respond to complexity and things that are sort of seen as hard in Irish writing more easily than in other literary forms. And I think that's really interesting. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. So raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. Now's your time. Great. I'm going to give you the mic.
Oh dear. I
Introduce
probably
yourself
don't need
a
one.
little bit.
Hello. Hi. Oh, is it on? It is. Great. Thank you. I'm Grace. You know me. I'm in one of your classes. I was just wondering whether you have any thoughts on the slight flattening of the term Irish I'm thinking of stuff like people often tell me that they love Irish literature and they mean
Yes.
Sally Rooney, or
Yeah.
they say, oh, you don't have an Irish accent to me because I don't sound like your man off House of Guinness or whatever.
Yeah.
And that kind of slight flattening.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that kind of flattening.
Yeah, of that kind of. What I'm interested in is that even though you're sort of saying it flat, which I absolutely agree with, that kind of ubiquity of Irish literature, like Sally Rooney's novel is still like a family drama, like led by like Wittgenstein and chess. You know what I mean? Like even though I think the idea of like Irishness is this sort of like this kind of trendy commodity. See, I'm not complaining because it means lots of students on my module. But I think it's the one thing that I've really felt it in is the amount of like really bad Irish bars that opened in Manchester recently that they're not like the Irish bars you would think of. They're very, very bad Irish bars. So and the way in which it is a saleable commodity, but I don't want to complain about it too much because like I said, we're all Salford. You know what I mean? And I'm really interested in it, especially like, like the way that someone like Aoife Colley uses those really has those really like bright Irish design. So I'm happy enough if obviously people are buying Irish things from Irish people. I'm happy enough if people are taking my courses. But then as soon as we start chatting to them, we can disabuse them and put more complicated things. So yes, yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
And you're going to write the literature. Yeah.
Other comments, other questions? Yep, introduce yourself.
David Saville, I work with Caroline. I just wanted to ask you more about CMAT.
Yeah.
Just because I haven't loved pop music for a long time, but I really love CMAT and I don't know why. And I wondered if you could explain that to me. And sorry,
I'm trying to do that for a few years.
No, but I mean, she interests me as a cultural figure and as a musician as well. And she's got that. She's Irish, but a lot of the music draws on the country and western and all that kind of stuff. Do you think she represents something new or a progression in kind of popular Irish culture in any way? Maybe that's the question I want to ask her.
Yeah. Popular Irish culture was not afraid to be political, to draw. Like I'm not sure. It's interesting whether or not you're responding to sort of like the musicality, that kind of legacy of country that you see, or whether or not it's her artistry. Like I think there's always been like Irish female musicians who haven't been afraid to take risks, do things that were controversial. And I think it's just with her. I think it's both to manage to have like the politics and the musicality and the artistry just all in one, I think, is probably what you're responding to. But I don't know that I can answer what you're responding to. I think that's for you.
Yeah. I think thinking about her musically, the kind of vulnerability and honesty.
Yeah.
Mixed in with the kind of thing about the willingness to be complex.
Yes.
To not be afraid of conflict.
Yes.
But it's not in an angry way. It's in a kind of open.
Yeah.
Like
it's the thing that the writer Emily Pine, she used to always say that she would really get sick of after she published this like award-winning memoir, that people would keep describing her writing as raw. And people would be like, it's so brave, it's so raw, as if there wasn't any artistry with that. And I think to have something that is, as you say, like really, that feels really honest, really authentic, really risk-taking, but is also channeled through a really clear, like musical sensibility, being able to write those sorts of records, I think is a rare combination. Yeah.
Another one up here, yep. Well, only because we're recording it, so it helps if you use it. Thank you.
I just wanted to talk a bit about the potato in Belfast Airport.
You're on, yes.
And
how is different to the southern potato?
Well, we do have potato land, but I think what I'm interested in is the reclamation of those sort of stereotypical, bantery, quite fraught really, and historically quite fraught imagery or whatever way. I'm just wondering how you connect those two things together.
Like when I see the potato at the airport, do I think of the famine?
Well, I guess when you hear, where that still becomes, the bunt of a joke, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we've all been to Irish weddings where there are 5 different types of potatoes, and that's okay for us to make fun of.
Yes.
But I guess when there's the, where that becomes a kind of a punch line for a joke, I'm just wondering how you square the two things.
Yeah, I think because obviously with, you know, as you say, with you know, the Chris company, that they have even different mascots in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland as well, and they almost sort of sponsor Belfast City Airport wholesale, so that you see these sorts of images everywhere. I think I don't know. I feel like because like we went to Tato Castle when we were in school, you know, it's been such like a ubiquitous part of it. I've never read it. I've never been like offended by it. But I think that you can know yourself when you're listening to people who are engaging with Irishness, whether they're doing so with a good intent or not. You know, when you know, we all know we've all had those, you know, kind of encounters. Although for most people, that real, you know, that I was talking about earlier on, that real anti-Irish racism is hopefully for the most part not nowhere near as prominent as it used to be. And that's what I think was really interesting about sort of this question as well, which is like, how do we or don't we welcome people into bits of Irish culture? What are people, you know, sort of, what are we okay with people joking about? And that's going to be different for different people, and it's going to be different also depending on those power relations as well. You know, it's going to be different when someone makes an anti-Irish remark that is, you know, that is your manager. You know what I mean? Like, our manager is not anti-Irish. His wife is Irish, although he doesn't know which part of Ireland she's from. You know, that's different to someone, you know, you having a bit of crack. So I think it's just really important to take these things a bit sort of individually. Yeah.
Yep, over here.
Your steps
Just getting steps in. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Elaine. Just a great selection of books. I haven't read all of them, but quite a lot. But I'm interested to know, as the population of Ireland has changed, obviously there's been a diaspora of other people, they say, arriving in. Now, in academic work, you do see academic papers, whatever, coming out from a range of people, but I'm not really seeing it in fiction. I think all those writers were white. And so I'm not really seeing that. I'm just wondering, is there a reason why you think that the fiction publishing hasn't caught up with what people must want to write?
Absolutely. I think that's a really good question, and I think Skein Press in Galway would probably be the press that is taking most of those risks at the moment. There are the publishers who are publishing writers from a range of backgrounds, writers who've been in direct provision, writers sort of from like a sort of traveller and carry background. Like but I think what you're saying is really interesting, which is the books that I've been talking about have become prominent because they've been published by Faber, by Penguin, by people like that. How do books get in people's hands is a question that I'm really interested in, and what is the vision of Irishness that people want to buy? Really, I think it's really, really important. And just anecdotally, what I've seen is a lot of like attention to diversity and things like there's so much like amazing sort of like poetry and performance poetry, and there's that poetry is, like I said, I think you're absolutely right to draw attention to that in fiction, but I do think it comes from a stuck place in publishing houses that are usually based in London of what they consider an Irish writer to be. But I think Skein Press are probably doing the most exciting work on that at the moment, and with my PhD student Elsie, they have a lot of work on those newer writers and how they engage with folklore. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Time for one more. Who's brave enough? Great. I'll just come up to the furthest point of the room. Always happy to get my extra step.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Emma. I'm was former colleague of Caroline, and I'd like to think we are still friends now. Why didn't you mention James Joyce? No, that is not my question. My question is, well, you've already achieved so much. First with, you know, your first monograph, and then Harpy is still getting so much attention, even now, you know, nearly a year after it's been released. And I suppose now you've done your professorial inaugural lecture. What is next?
Don't ask me that now.
But that, do you want to go to the James Joyce question?
What I'm interested in is I'm really interested in this sort of the real new vibrancy of writing that is still kind of coming out of the north at the moment, and I'm really interested in I've recently finished some work on the Northern Irish stomach that I'm still working on at the moment, which is the idea of gut feelings. And I'm really interested in like kind of like psychobiology and the way in which like the legacy of conflict still finds its way into feeling bad and feeling sort of like you're sort of like still unsettled. Basically, everyone in contemporary Irish fiction has a bad stomach. And I became really interested in what does it mean if you've been continually taught not to trust your own bodily sensations because of a prolonged conflict. What does it mean to try to tune back into the body? So I'm really interested in all that kind of like somatic stuff when we're turning into the body. So, and also with Sheila and other colleagues, launching our Irish network and finding out what are the ways in which we as a university can really contribute to that migrant community. So there are a few things that I'm thinking about at the moment.
Wow. So does the stomach link to the potato? No. just went through my head when you were talking about it. Caroline, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone, both online and in the room, who have listened to this most fantastic journey, isn't it? And as we said, you've now got your reading list. We'd like to congratulate you, Professor Caroline Magennis, and we'd like to present you with this. We couldn't get a bigger one. I know you wanted a really large glass. Caroline has promised to bring this out with her for the whole night. So we're all going to place our bets to see, does it really last till tomorrow morning? Yes. So with that, are there any more words you would like to say?
No, just thank you all so much for coming along, and thanks to all of my colleagues and students for just being so open-minded about Irish writing and willing to accept these texts and share with me your ideas. It's been really it's been an amazing 12, 13 years at Salford. So yeah, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. So congratulations again, and everybody here in the room is welcome to go over to the art gallery, and everyone online.
Other way.
When you go out the front door, it's left. Okay, and everyone online is invited to treat themselves to a cup of tea or a glass of whatever. So thank you very much again. Another round of applause.